Hello, wonderful people. Welcome to this week's conversation on the YouTube Creators Hub podcast. Dusty here, as always, with my good friend and fellow creator, Josh Griffin from the HVAC Guide for Homeowners. The channel now has almost 150,000 subscribers, just over 1,000 videos. Josh, you have absolutely been taking the HVAC community by storm with just the intuitive and innovative things that you're doing on your YouTube channel, and I'm sure we'll talk about that and the growth you've had. You've been on the show one other time. You are a part of our mastermind group, and you and I talk quite frequently. I'd say quite frequently, but we talk at least once a month on the calls, and sometimes even more than that. And I cannot wait to talk to you today about some experiences you've had that have kind of changed your mindset on YouTube and kind of how the trajectory of your channel. So how are you doing today, sir?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. This is a dream come true, sir. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, you're being nice, and I'll pay you later, but I appreciate you saying that. We're just going to go ahead and just dive right into it. No fluff, anything like that. I'm just going to just ask you this question, and then we'll kind of jump off from here. You just recently came back from VidSummit, and you correct me if I'm wrong. This is the first time you've been to something like that, correct?
First time. I've never been to any YouTube educator conference or meeting of any kind.
Okay, and so you made the decision, and it is a commitment, and I think we would be remiss if we didn't talk about that. It's a commitment of not only your time, but your resources and your finances and finding a room and getting together. But as we're going to talk about, the community building aspect of it and what you gained from it was well worth the money and the time that you spent, and so we'll certainly talk about that. But I do have to mention that it is a time sink, it is a money sink, and there are some resources that you have to put in place and some planning and mental space, things like that. So all those things out of the way, let's just talk about it. You went, give me the initial experience. You show up, you get there. What's your initial just response of just, you're there for an hour or so and you're just, what are you thinking?
So we got there on the first day because it's a multiple day thing. And we stood in this line. And for me, I can't speak for any other conferences or because I know there's a number of them out there. But immediately, just the conversations that we were already having standing in line to get into the building, I could tell everybody there is there for the same reason I am. Like this is not a hobby, although for some of us it's kind of a hobby too. Let's be honest, it's funner than my old job. But just the folks that were in line immediately, I was like, this is different. We're talking about things that, I love some of the educators out there that will say things like, just hit that record button. But that's step one. I'm way past that. I hit the record button. Now what? And, we were talking about the now what. And it was just, just immediately, just already, I was like, okay, I'm in the right place.
Being surrounded by those people in person, where in your normal day-to-day walk, you're not all the time talking about like, hey, what are your thoughts on like my packaging for my videos, or what are you doing to kind of grow your brand, or how far should I niche down? These are all topics that I assume are coming up at a conference like this. And so let's talk about, let's do them individually. Let's not just, me ask you a question and then you give me all of them and not really break them down. Let's just do them one by one. What are some things that you learned when you were there that has really changed your mindset on not just your YouTube channel, but being a content creator in general?
So there's a lady named Hope Scope that gave a talk, and there were multiple talks that elaborated on it, but the main theme of her talk was knowing your audience. And I think for me, I know what my content's about, and I thought I knew who my audience was, but they got even deeper and talked a lot about who not just your audience, but who your target avatar is. Meaning if you were to pick the most perfect person, and not so much, it's so much deeper than that, because I don't even know if I'm giving it enough justice trying to describe what her talk was about, because they not only do you determine who that is and what their gender is and what their age is, but then they go further than that. Like, what are they into? What are their hobbies? What else are they watching online other than hopefully your next YouTube video? And it really puts me in because most of my content, I've always said, is it's for heating and air customers. They're about to buy a heating and air system, and that's my audience. But I've never really given it more thought than that. Like, I've never thought so deep on the level of, well, when they stop watching YouTube for the 8 or 10 minutes that they just watched, what are they going to next? And what did they last go to? So it's just her talk in general probably changed my entire trajectory on my next 50 videos, because now there's a little more intent behind, okay, what are they doing? And maybe my next video would have been super in depth and very informative, but maybe, just maybe, that target avatar ain't gonna click it anyway. And it really doesn't even matter how informative that next video was going to be, because it wasn't going to appeal to them enough to even click it. And so it just shifted everything for me on that front.
So let's speak on just specifically relating that to your channel. Now that you've gotten back home, how have you implemented this specific thing? Like, you make, for people who don't know, his channel is the HVAC Guide for Homeowners. Go check it out. You have your niche. You kind of have the space that you kind of live in on your channel. But what type of perspective shift has this talk in general made for you? And give us the examples with your channel specifically.
So the first thing that I would say that I am doing different, and I've done it with you, whether you know it or not, because I signed up for one of your coaching calls one time, and that is, I want to see it through a lens of somebody that doesn't necessarily know as much as I do about what I do. I want to see it through, what do they think my next video should be, or what is missing from my channel when they go to it. So I've been doing a lot more of that. I asked some of the people there at VidSummit, once I made that mind shift, what do you think? And because of that, my latest video is doing better than most of my videos. It's performing a little better. And I think for me, again, I make educational content, and the theme of my channel has always been that when I started my channel, there were a lot of heating and air guys making videos for other heating and air guys, but nobody was making content for mom if she was about to buy her next heating and air system. And that's always kind of been my slogan, if you will. But at the same time, maybe my content's not necessarily for mom. Maybe my content's for that millennial first-time home buyer who just happens to be trying to figure out why there's an arrow on their air filter, and I need to do a quick, broad, bird's eye view of that topic and answer some of those questions. So as you can tell, my avatar has changed since VidSummit. I mean, I'm now thinking about things that I never have before.
I'm so excited to hear you say that, because it was part of a little bit of the conversation that you and I had privately when we did the coaching session, but with you kind of defining that millennial who that was me when I first got my house. I knew nothing about, I was never trained. My dad and I never did sit down, and he never did say, okay, this is how you replace an air filter. Here's how important it is to do it frequently. And, we talked about changing the oil in my vehicle. That was something he and I were both interested, whatever. But as far as like the air filter side of things, like that would be me. So your video would be perfect for me if I think about a couple at my church who just recently, very young couple, just recently got their first house, and I'm sure they know certain things, but others they don't. And so having guides like that on your channel, that is so powerful to hear you talk about kind of how it's redefining of how you think about who these videos are for. And you're still making the same content. It's just how you're kind of packaging it. It's how you're putting it out there, the titles. And your most recent video, I think, is a great example of that. It's, I assume you're talking about the video, the 5 reasons HVAC systems are so expensive. Is that the one you're referring to? Yeah. And so it's got a great thumbnail, and for people who don't know much about heating and air, like, why are they so, I know what it does for me. So again, you're breaking it down, knowing who your audience is. And I love that. I would encourage people listening to this to really think about your audience and what they do after they click off one of your videos, or what they do before they click on one of your videos. And what people don't realize is that this will help their monetization, right? Would you not agree with this? Like, this is going to help you make more money, not only with the ad program, but with sponsors. And when you can really hone in who you're reaching and who you're getting in the box when they're watching your video, that's a very important and powerful thing. So, okay, that's one. We talked about her call. Now, what's the next one? Was there something else after that?
Well, so one of the cool things that VidSummit does is they have multiple rooms. And so you can almost, when I was a kid, there were these books called Choose Your Own Adventure. I don't know if you ever saw those, but you know, you could choose, you know, if I'm going to take the mountain or the valley, and then it would say, okay, flip to that page. And so the entire book could be different for you versus me, because maybe you took a different option than I did. So VidSummit, there's different rooms, there's different breakout sessions. And so I can't speak to every session, obviously, you know, and so one of the sessions I did was on contracts with a potential sponsor. And that changed everything for me. I learned what the word perpetuity means, and that maybe I don't want it in every contract, or any contract. And, you know, I feel like I'm probably, I would like to think a little smarter, a little sharper than the average bear. But, you know, I've always had lawyers involved just to kind of cover me. But I went back through a contract that I hired a lawyer, I signed to the contract, and now that I'm learning some of these things, there's probably some verbiage that I didn't even want in there, and I even had a lawyer look at it. So that would probably be another one I would throw in there, is they focus on more than just the videos themselves, but maybe as YouTube as a business and some of the things we need to be making sure we're making good business decisions on. I don't know if that answers your question, but
it does. I think about a lot of contracts that I've done over the years that have been like a he said, she said, where, you know, when I first started the podcast and people were approaching me about coming on the podcast and the show as a sponsor, I'm like, oh yeah, money, that sounds great. And then I'd send them an invoice on PayPal, and there wouldn't be much to it. But I think that covering all your bases and being smart about how you do your business. And so let's talk about YouTube as a business for a minute, since we're kind of on this topic. Where have you shifted as far, and I know you have because I kind of been watching your journey and kind of been listening to some things you've been talking about. Where has your mindset shifted as far as like your channel and where it plays a role in how you make money? Can you talk about that for a minute?
Well, I don't know that VidSummit alone made a huge shift in that manner. I will say after that class, I have turned down 3 different sponsors for different reasons. You know, and there's different, as I said, there's different reasons for that. It ain't just because of the wording in their contract, but just knowing kind of what the end goal is. And it may not be to always make a quick buck. Maybe the end goal is for my next video to hopefully go viral. For me, maybe not viral in general, but just viral for me is more important to me than making an extra $1,000 on that next deal, if that makes sense.
It does make sense.
But just in general, as far as business decisions go, this is a business, and it can be as big or small as you want it to be. If it's just a hobby, I know a lot of the folks that are in your group and probably listen to your show, maybe they don't necessarily look at this as a career, but if you do look at it as a career, I think you need to make decisions based on that, long-term decisions. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah, I think that no truer words have ever been spoken on this show. It certainly is a marathon. How are you dealing with sponsors just as a whole? Like, can you talk about something you and I listened to our last episode that we did from back when we did that first one way back. And, we didn't talk about this, didn't cover it, because at the time, I'm not quite sure you were doing much sponsor stuff. I think this is kind of a new thing. Not new, but it's a newer thing for you, new development. And so what are some kind of tips or maybe some things that you've learned from your failures of dealing with sponsors, of advice? And we're kind of straying away from kind of VidSummit now. So this is more just kind of what's going on with your channel. What are the not really pros and cons, but what are the tips and tricks of dealing with sponsors and how to do it the right way?
Well, I think that number one, it's okay to say no, right? I would go into almost every single negotiation with the thought of I could just possibly walk away from this.
Yeah.
So for example, for me personally, I can't speak for all creators, but if there is language in the contract that is uncomfortable, that's already a red flag. If that company has language in their contract that doesn't have my best interests at heart, that automatically does not line up with my values. And because of that, I may not even work with you because of that now. Now, again, that's maybe just me personally. Maybe there is something to be said for negotiations and redlining a contract and so on. But that's probably the first thing. Some of the other things I would say, it's okay to say no. I would say if you do need to be making money, though, just understand that it's a numbers game. So if you need one sponsor, then you probably need to take meetings from at least 10 or 15 companies. And to get meetings with 10 or 15 companies, you probably need to approach a couple hundred, if not more. So it's a numbers game, just like anything else in sales. I don't know if that answers your question.
It did. It answered my question very well, and it's a numbers game. Like, I think of it like having people as guests on my podcast. You know, every Monday and Tuesday, I have a list of people, and I have someone who's helping me. I got another gentleman who might be helping me as well to curate. I call it my algorithm, but it's really not an algorithm. I have kind of requirements of people that I'd love to have on the podcast, and they have a certain growth number, and it's not like a subscriber number. It's like, how quickly are they growing? I go to like some of these tools and I can see kind of how many views they're getting, and I want people who are growing, and not just people who have massive sub numbers, but I also want smaller creators and things like that. And I email out 25 on Monday, 25 on Tuesday, something I've been doing for years now. And now that people are kind of coming to me to be on the show, as the show has grown, it's kind of helped out because I kind of supplement that way. But it's a numbers game. I may email 50 people, but only 2 or 3 get back. Now, there are some weeks where I email 50 and I get like last week I got like 13 responses. So it really just depends. It is a numbers game. Now, I do want to ask you this, Josh, as far as like view count requirements, like people ask me all the time, how big do I have to be to get sponsors? And I think you're a great person to ask about this. Because being in the education space in a specific niche like the heating and air area, some of your videos are going to get more views than others because of the nature of the video, right? Like you're doing these secret tips and tricks videos and things that you need to know as a contractor. Those may get really high views. Evergreen content like how to change your air filter may get a ton of views over 6 or 7 years, but your normal everyday average video may only average, 5, 10, 12, 15,000, whatever it may be. So how many views are like, is there a metric, or should I be looking at demographics? Give me the breakdown of what I should look when I'm approaching a sponsor.
I think it's a really good question because obviously if you don't have a huge following, that plays a role. And I don't feel like I do. I feel like I'm just still getting started. That said, I think that should be part of the conversation. So for me, when I approach a sponsor, my goal is not to land them as a sponsor. My goal is to land them on a discovery call. And then on that call, get some of their expectations and just kind of get a feel for where they are. I think if their expectations are either unreasonable, or you can just already tell that they're going to be tough to work with, is that okay to say?
Mm-hmm. That's right. Then
that should affect your pricing. That should affect whether you even want to work with them, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. So I, from the get-go, again, from the very first moment, I'm looking for a reason to not work with them. And that's okay. I would much rather say no to that one and still have enough time in my calendar to fill with the next good one than to, again, make a couple bucks, but just not enjoy the experience of working with them.
Yeah. Over the years, I have turned down many a sponsor just off of the initial kind of vibe, I guess would be a good word, that I got from the initial phone call of, man, this is, I may make $1,500, which is $500 more than I would make early on in my YouTube career or podcasting, whatever. But man, I can already tell it's going to be a thorn in my side if I, you can just get that feeling, right, of like what's a good company. And also speak on just like trusting the product and like knowing that your audience is a valuable asset for you, and promoting things with sponsorships that you not only approve of, but that you might use yourself, or, valuing the trust that your audience and yourself have built along the way?
The very first sponsor that ever offered me what I would call, I don't want to say life-changing money, but more than a hobby money. The very first one I ever said no to, I only said no to them, not because I didn't necessarily dislike their product, but I wasn't sure that they were the best at what they do. And so for me, I want to align that if you see me talk about a sponsor on my channel, they're the best. Like they're going to be the best at what they do, usually, for the most part. And so I think that your reputation is a part of that. I think one good example of that is a few years ago that FTC where that guy was crazy and a bunch of celebrities were paid to work with him. Obviously, they did not do their homework, and to me it hurt their reputation. Most of those types of folks could probably bounce back from it, but if you're seen as an expert, a subject matter expert for your niche, and then you go ruining your reputation, I'm not sure you're bouncing back from that. So again, I think it's a whole lot easier to say no than ending up in a courtroom a year later. And I'm probably being extreme on that. Maybe a courtroom's not the place you're going to end up, but your channel could stop growing.
It's easy for people to hear us say this and they're like, oh yeah, well they have sponsors and they've made money, right? Like I always try to think about it from my audience perspective of someone listening to this, like on their walk and they have a small channel or they started a channel, or they may be a large channel and they haven't dabbled in sponsorships yet. But I truly mean this when I say I've turned down way more sponsorship offers than I've accepted. I mean, we're talking tenfold, right? Because you really have to value that relationship that you have. I mean, I can't tell you how many AI companies are approaching me right now. I mean, and there's a couple of sponsors that I have taken AI-wise for the podcast, but it's because I believe in them and I've spoken with the founders, and these are people who I believe have the betterment of the creators in mind for my niche, right? And so I just feel like it's so important to know as a creator where you stand and the trust that you have, and to not take advantage of the people, to not take advantage of their time or money. You take advantage of one of those or both, and you're really going to ruin something. You're going to rub somebody the wrong way. You want to mess with someone, mess with their time and their money, and it's going to mess with some people's. They're not going to have a good taste in their mouth. So, completely agree with you there. So, there are some changes coming to YouTube. They announced some at VidSummit that week, and they've announced some recently, as of the past week, in extending short form content to 3-minute. Style shorts. What was the feeling that you were getting when you were there? Just the thoughts and the conversations that you were overhearing at VidSummit of kind of the direction of YouTube and kind of where you see it going as a creator and what it's going to mean for us.
So I forget what's the guy's name. Bilyeu, I think is his last name. Tom Bilyeu, maybe.
Tom Bilyeu, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, he gave a talk about AI and he actually showed some examples, and it's not going away, obviously. For me, honestly, it's a little scary. I think that one of the things they talked about was how AI in the future will not just be able to, help make content and things like that, but it'll also even go so far as to know what your habits are based on the next piece of content, and then be able to generate that content immediately right there. Now, I think we're a little far from that during this conversation, but that's crazy if that is where we end up. If you go on there to do one thing and it automatically is generating content for the next 5 minutes right there on the spot for you to consume, that's a little crazy.
So I heard a conversation in a podcast that I was listening to this week, and the question was presented that said, 15 years ago, when all the social media companies were cropping up, Facebook and Twitter, now X, and then, Instagram, and as of late, TikTok or whatever, the question was posed, what should we have done as a society, as people, to regulate, or what should we have done differently? Because there's a lot of data and science now behind how, you can't see me if you're not watching the video version, but basically how our phones are, especially for young people, our attention spans are abysmal. A lot of it is linked to social media and how we're consuming content. Let's leave YouTube out of it for a minute. So when it comes to AI, I guess I want to pose the same question to you, Josh. What, if any, type of regulation or things that, looking back at this whole Facebook generation, like what could we have done differently, and what can we do knowing how powerful AI is going to be? Because I am with you. I'm not sure how excited I am about watching a video and then within those 5 minutes having an AI create the thing that I want to. I don't know if that interests me at all. Like, one of the things that I love about YouTube is, I mean, it's the main thing, the people. YouTube has always been people or creator centric, which is why I started this show. I don't want to interview AIs on this podcast or robots, right? I want to interview people who have, it might have been episode 30 or 40 of this show almost a decade ago, but there was a father and his son who came on the show, and I asked the father, I said, hey, what does it mean to you to be able to do this with your son? And they now have over 1 million subscribers, and they've gone on to do really big things. And just nothing, dead air. And I could tell he was tearing up. He was starting to cry.
Oh my gosh.
The power of people on this platform, I think, is what makes it. And so I hope that we don't lose the essence of that. And I do see that there were some things that I wish we would have done as a society with social media. And I see what it's done to young people. I see what it's done to kids who now have iPads and YouTube Kids and all these things that they're constantly inundated with notification after notification. We forget just what matters and kind of what should take precedent. So for you, the creator, talk about both sides of those things, and like, what do you think we should do knowing that AI is this big ball rolling down a hill and we're not going to stop it?
Whew, that's a lot to unpack right there.
It is.
What we could have done differently, honestly, I'll just kind of tiptoe around that because I think part of this is it doesn't really matter what we would have done differently because here we are.
Hindsight, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so here we are. And I think moving forward, I can't speak for all audiences. I can't speak for everyone that consumes any sort of content. Yeah. But I can say personally that if I come across a piece of content that I know is AI generated or I know is acting, so like I see these prank videos that'll pop up on my feeds sometimes. And if I can tell, or at least I think they're acting, then I usually will, number one, skip them. And I've even blocked people because of it, because that's not why I'm there, And I think that at the end of the day, why are people on YouTube? Well, they're there for 3 reasons. They're either there to be entertained, they're there to get value in some way, or they're there to learn something. And as long as you're fulfilling one of those 3 things, regardless of how that content is generated, then, you're going to win. And so I can only speak from personal experience. I think there could come to a point where it's going to be hard to discern what's AI generated and what's not.
And that's the scary part, right?
Yeah, that is the scary part.
Someone who has kids, and someone who, we're already seeing it with celebrities doing, deep fake videos, and all of these things make me want to go back to that old blocky interface of YouTube when I first started, of just, I can still see the old interface. And I know it makes me sound old, but I worry about the younger generations, the type of content that they're going to be, I don't know, it just feels so watered down. And I feel like YouTube as a platform has done a good job thus far. I'm saying thus far. You could be listening to this later on and this not be the case, but doing things like providing the AI software or AI ability to have backgrounds for your vertical video that they're going to do. Like, all these things sound really cool, and they're supplemental. They're not something that's going to be the replacement. And we were already seeing the crop of like faceless channels and people that and I have nothing against faceless channels. I know creators making tons of money doing it. And some would consider my channel faceless because I oftentimes never show my face. I'm just doing tutorial videos. So it really just depends on kind of how you're looking at it. And I do think that it's going to be an interesting topic to cover as far as AI, in the future of kind of where do we go? How does it get regulated? And I kind of am excited to see where it goes, but I'm also a little bit nervous as well. So I could not agree more. Talk about, in closing now, for the next few minutes, Josh, the con experience of going to VidSummit as a whole, not a specific talk. Why would you encourage people listening to this to find a conference to go to? I've gone to a few, not very many in the recent years because of small children, but I have gone to podcasts, small ones in Atlanta and things like that, and attended some virtually, so I know the benefit of them. What would you say to someone? Because I'll be honest with you, when you got on that call last time, right after you got back, I mean, you were just basically glowing. I mean, you were just beaming of motivation. I think of those kind of box cars we had as kids, and that car would get down and you'd have, I don't know if you ever had those little things that had the little motorized things where once they slowed down almost to a crawl and then they get right to it, zooms it out. I feel like that was you. You had been just boosted. You've really been motivated of, man, my eyes have been open to a whole new world. I've been doing this thing this same way for a long time, and now I know there's another side of this thing. Speak on just that whole experience.
So, again, I can't speak for all conferences. I think there are some cool conferences out there that have celebrities or football players at, right? So I can only speak for VidSummit. VidSummit did not pay me to do this, but I can tell you that I don't know that I'll ever miss another one. It changed everything for me personally. You talk about some of the new things that are coming. They talk about that there, right? That can be your source of information and so on. I talked earlier about how there are other people there that are for the same reasons. I don't know if that's the case for all conferences. If somebody's listening to this and this is just a hobby, VidSummit's probably not for you. It's not cheap to go. The people that are there are, for the most part, there for the same reasons that I am. They're there to figure this thing out, figure out how to grow this thing and get motivated, right? I wanted to highlight, I made a few notes of some of the things that were there that I did not know would be there. So the breakout sessions, there were vendors there. So if you do want to know what the latest and greatest products or AI or any of those sorts of things, there were vendors there that were, giving out things. That's the other thing. They were constantly giving away stuff. So that was kind of cool. There's networking. They actually use an app so you can meet up with other creators. So like one night I had dinner with some of the folks that are in your group and a few others. We all kind of met up at this restaurant, and that was kind of cool. And then the app itself, I noted that it's got a number of things in there that you can draw from, and you can message with people. There's a little instant messenger inside of there. But yeah, again, they didn't pay me to say this, but I would highly recommend checking it out. It might be one of the more expensive options out there, but I think that there's reasons for that. They want to make sure that you're there for the right reasons and you're not just there to get around, another big YouTuber or something like that. That said, I feel like I got my value out of it. I spent some money, but I got what I needed, and I was really motivated. I would just say that if you go there, I would go there with an open, and this probably goes for any conference, but that one specifically, because of everything they talk about. It's not that it's different than the things that I've learned or have experienced, but they're thinking about it in a different way that I had never considered. Yeah. And so a lot of the breakout sessions, a lot of the keynote talks, they're talking about things that are not just a different way of looking at it, but also a higher level of looking at it. So when I'm trying to, if I'm getting 1,000 or 5,000 views per video, and I want to get to 10 or 15, they're like, no. How do we get to 1 million views per video? And what do we got to do to make that happen? And I'm like, okay, this is different,
Right. It's a high level. It's a high level of conversation, and it's different. I love that. And oftentimes when I talk to people who come back from conferences and things that they've experienced. It's the hallway conversations or the restaurant conversations or whatever it may be of these people that are, it's so invigorating and motivating when you talk to people who are doing what you're doing, and it's just so motivational of just having back and forth conversations about YouTube, about content creation. It is really powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a lot of that too. One of the guys I talked to told me that he was out in the hallway more than he was in the rooms. And just having some of those conversations. And again, they're there for the same reasons you are. So if you ever do make it to VidSummit, there's a hotel near the venue, and that's where like all the, you name it, of the who's who. I don't want to drop any names because I'll leave them out, but the big YouTubers, that's where in the lobby area of that hotel. If you want a fangirl, if you like, getting around some of these people, that's where you would do it. Some of the largest YouTubers in the world were in that room, and I'll be honest with you, I was fangirling a little bit. Colin and Samir were there. That's one name I'll throw out there. So that was just kind of crazy.
Colin and Samir, they've got a great show, a good newsletter, and they're a great resource for creators. Sometimes it's a little bit much for me, some of the stuff that some of those guys talk about, just because a lot of it is kind of blurring the lines between YouTube and Hollywood, at times now. And I'm so into the individual content creator of kind of what people can do on YouTube. I love that aspect of what YouTube provides those people, that sometimes that line blurs a little bit, and I love what they're doing for that top level of creators. So again, big praise for VidSummit in particular, and hopefully we can encourage people to go, and I want to go in the future as well to get to really sit with my community and because we've built a community here, and to see those people get together, it was emotional for me, and to have you send me that picture, it was really neat. So, but hey, listen, Josh, I appreciate your time today. I want to close with this. YouTube is changing. There's a lot going on, and with everything, what would you leave the creators as you leave the show? Like, what's top of mind for you for your YouTube channel going forward, the end of 2024 into 2025?
So I'll say this. There were people there at VidSummit that had 0 subscribers a year or two before that were there with millions. And so I think that the opportunity is there. I think that I hate when people say, oh, there's never been a better time, because maybe that's cliche and maybe it's disingenuous, but I do still think it's a great time. There are people that now that they've figured out the formula, they're starting channels from scratch with what they know now and growing, exponentially. And so that alone just shows you it's not too late. The opportunity is there. And I would just encourage anybody that's, maybe thinking about it or just getting started, that, man, just go for it. And you're going to look back and be like, oh my gosh, thank goodness I did.
Why didn't I do it sooner?
Yeah.
I did something. Speaking of AI, and I thought this was a really cool thing, and I'm going to end on this, and I think you'll think this is neat too. I took all of my previous podcast episodes and their transcripts using a tool, and I put them in this kind of large language model, which is just a version of an AI, and I basically asked it a bunch of questions. And one of the questions that I asked it, I said, the prompt was, I often ask my guest, what is something that you wish you would have known sooner, or whatever, getting this far in your YouTube journey. And I believe I put in 362 transcripts and audio logs into this large language model, the AI, and it presented to me kind of like a top-down graph of some of the responses. And there was over 160 some odd people that said the same thing: just start. Like, that was the 2 words. It was either just start or I wish I would started sooner. Almost 200 out of the 400 almost interviews, that was the thing. And so if you're listening to this, just whatever that thing is, whatever that barrier or roadblock is, I just want to encourage you, just go out there and do it. Like, you have these phones that we carry around. We were talking about being so distracting earlier. they've got wonderful cameras. There's cheap ways to get into things now. So I'm with you. I've said it so many times. It is cliche to say there's no better time to start than now, or, it was yesterday, whatever. Get over all that. Just do it. Just start it, and you can improve on it. And even if you do 50 videos and they suck, you'll get better every time that you do it. So, Josh, thanks again. Josh from the HVAC Guide for Homeowners, good friend of mine, wonderful creator. All of his links will be down below. And Josh, we'll talk to you next time.
Thanks, pal.